This is James Lupton, and I'm here joined with Greg Meehan. Greg, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, James. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, mate. I want to get you on today, something a little bit different for our channel. Normally I have fighters or coaches on. You're a coach of some sorts, but of a different kind. So you're a mindset coach for the Matchroom Boxing Gym. First of all, just tell me a little bit about what that entails and what that means.
It's quite a vast topic, to be honest. Fighters or athletes will come to me from various sports, depending on what it is they're looking to improve on, either in mindset or anything along the lines of controlling emotions, maybe, or helping with their nervous system before a fight or in camp. Also, a lot to do with breath work to help with that regulation, and so to do with the physical side of it as well. Also helps with that, teaching them how to breathe correctly, because believe it or not, a lot of professional athletes don't breathe functionally. So that's something I work with quite a lot of people at the moment, is helping them to breathe optimally.
You say, believe it or not, or did that surprise you when you first got into the line of work? How many athletes weren't breathing correctly?
Yeah, it did actually. I mean, I passed a certification called the Oxygen Advantage, which is specifically designed for athletes and their breathing systems. And before that, I passed a few other types of breathing courses, and I sort of mixed it together and had my own system. But that particular one was, they asked to do a bio of me to put on their website so people could find me. And they asked about what sport I worked in. And I said, well, you can execute this in any sport. And they said, what predominantly sport do you work in? And I said, boxing. And they didn't have it labelled on their website as no one working in there in that particular area. Every other sport under the sun. So I found that quite interesting. And after that, I started to notice it more, that a lot of fighters don't breathe correctly. They're all super fit, and it doesn't mean they're not fit because they don't breathe correctly, but they can get extra 1% if they learn how to breathe the right way. So, but yeah, I was quite surprised the amount. I work with quite a few footballers as well who have the same problem, and it's a case, if you can't control your breathing, you're not going to be able to control how you think as well. No matter how fit you are, you can hyperventilate without realizing when you're mouth breathing, and that will drop your intelligence level. And obviously in the ring or on the pitch, it's quite important. So learning to control that is a big thing. A lot that I've been working on at the moment with people.
You mentioned their mouth breathing. It comes on to my next question nicely. I recently read an article, and it was an interview with Erling Haaland, the Man City player, and he says he goes to bed and sleeps with his mouth taped shut to breathe through his nose. And he says that helps him, and he finds that beneficial. Just for those who don't know, just tell us how that does help and how that benefits by getting the nose breathing correct.
Well, basically, the mouth is for eating, the nose is for breathing, and that's something that as babies understand that. That's why you'll see a baby sleeping, and it'll have its mouth closed, and it'll be very quiet. It's breathing through your nose. Sometimes you're looking in the cot thinking, "Is baby all right?" It's because they optimally breathe. But as we get older, so like the age of 2, we start replicating our parents who breathe through their mouth, because that's the easiest way for the body and brain to function in terms of breath. But it's actually not optimal at all. It's the nasal passage that humidifies all the air that comes in for the health benefits. So the air that we breathe through our nose is healthier. When we breathe it through our mouth, it's going straight into our system. It's like a lot of bad air that we can breathe in. And for an athlete to do with their sleep as well, is if they can nasal breathe in their sleep, they'll hit deeper sleep states as well. It's a lot to do with the way we lie on our side as well. Our tongue will lean to the side, so that when we're trying to breathe through our mouth, we won't get the correct breath in and out, and we'll wake up and we'll, like sleep apnea, some people get. So it's like the airflow doesn't go correctly. But then we're not, respiratory systems are not trained to breathe just through our nose unless you do a training course with someone like me. So a lot of people will take their mouths for bed, and naturally their nose will breathe through their nose. It sounds like a bit risky taking your mouth up, but believe it or not, your nose actually just does the job for you. If you're somebody that does a course, like there's a few fighters that I work with now that I've worked with for like 2, 3, 4 camps, and that they will sleep nasally now because they practice it so much throughout all the training we do on a daily basis, most of them. But for someone like Harley, I sometimes have the tape that if I know I haven't had a good night's sleep the night after, I'll wear the tape. I have a different one that goes around the mouth rather than over it, and it sort of closes the mouth a little bit, and I find I'll sleep deeper. And for people that wear the Whoop watches and Apple's watches, if they monitored that, they'd see the same sort of effect. So it's effectively to help deeper sleep recovery for athletes, so they can recover better the next day.
There's two main topics I want to talk about today. Obviously, we're a boxing channel, so we're going to focus on a couple of your fighters. First one, I see a picture over your shoulder of him, Conor Benn. Someone you've worked with in the Matchroom gym. Obviously, he's been going through these, I don't know if it's been a court case. He failed his drugs test and he's gone through a bit of rigmarole with it, not been in the ring for a long time. Have you helped him through this stage of his career in terms of his mindset and mentality?
Well, my work with Conor is mainly breath work. I would say I'm his official breath work coach. I'm quite friendly and close with Conor as well. I would say that a lot of the situation he's been through, he's been able to handle it quite well on his own. It's been tough for him. I think it's something that he's shown great maturity in, and it's good to see him back in the ring again. From my perspective, it's more to do with the breathing for his physical performance, and along with that, it helps control nervous system and relaxation, ready to perform.
If you were his mindset coach or any fighter going through that situation that you work with on that side of things, and they were, struggling to cope with that side of things, essentially he's had his career put on hold and he's not been able to earn because he's not been able to get in the ring. And that can do a lot to a man's mindset or anybody's mindset and mentality. What would you advise your client going through that situation?
It's quite interesting, really. Most of the boxers that work with me have great mindsets. They also have people around them away from me that are also very good at mindset. So generally, most boxers will have a boxing coach who has a level of mindset because he has to get them through sessions. And then the strength and conditioning guys, they have a level of mindset as well because they have to also get them through sessions. But from a deeper level, with someone like me, it would be about reassuring fighters if they're out for a certain time. Like, for example, if one of them's injured or something along them lines, they can't fight and they can't get paid. I guess it would be more of a case of just reassuring them that it's going to come again, and just making sure they keep on track in terms of training. And someone like Conor, who was unfortunately out for a little while, trained non-stop. And that's an example of his own mindset that he brings to the table himself. For other fighters, maybe if that was an example, it would be a case of staying close to them and trying to make sure they ticked over, because if you let that side slip, which many fighters would probably do, a lot of them do when they get injured as well, they won't train, they don't really feel the bars, especially if you've got no if a fighter has no fixed date, even a fighter that's active. From my experience, fighters that are active and they finish a job and it's like they go on holiday, come back, they're sort of like, right, what do I do now? And they'll go back to the gym, and then after a couple of weeks, if there's no fight day, they seem to get a bit like irritated, and they drive, and they lack a bit of focus because they've not got nothing to really aim for. So in terms of that, it's a case of just making sure that fighters will keep themselves ticking over and making sure that they're okay, and that, because you can easily get forgotten in boxing as well if people are not active. But the example of someone like Conor, his mindset for himself is, he's just there. He's there all the time, training hard. So, and that was good. And it's good to see him back.
You mentioned how a fighter can find it difficult going through periods of inactivity, or even just after that fight, and then they know they've got another maybe 6 months to a year wait until they fight again. And that can be a struggle because for a lot of fighters, it's all they know. They live, breathe, and, for boxing, and that's it. There's nothing more that they feel they can do. A good example is Tyson Fury. He said, he's retired, and he was, I need to come back. I can't live my life without, having something to focus on in terms of boxing. Is that something you've ever, come across with any of your fighters in terms of struggling with retirement or potential thoughts of retiring? Or if it isn't, again, what would you do in that scenario? What would your advice be, like, say, Tyson Fury, who has openly come out and said publicly, I will struggle without boxing?
No, I think that he's a great example, and he's an example I use to a lot of fighters as well, especially younger fighters. One of the most important things I do, James, as well, when I start working with a fighter is I make sure that they try and enjoy the journey that they're on. You know, it's about trying to keep them present. You know, when times get tough in the camp, you know, one of the main focuses I do is to try and help them enjoy the whole journey, because someone like Tyson Fury is a classic case of, all I wanted to be was a world champion. That was his thing, you know, and I wouldn't give up until I got it. And that was it. And that was the goal. And that's all I see. That's a great mindset to a certain extent. But then the downside to that is, once they get that, they, you know, it's like they forget everything that was on the way. That was the sole focus. They get it, and it's like they fall off a cliff. And that's what happened with him, you know. And then it becomes a case of, like, their identity becomes boxing. You know, I'm a boxer and that's it. So a lot of the time I'll work with a fighter, and I'll advise and say, listen, you're so much more than just a fighter. There's so much more to you than that, than what you believe you are. And I think it's changing the mindset of, every fighter wants to be a world champion. That's great. You know, we've got to have goals in life to aim for. At the same time, we've got to enjoy the journey that we're on with it. Otherwise, we'll get to these points and we'll just like fall apart, and then we'll feel like we're nothing else. So I think there's a big identity crisis in boxing, but I think that could be described in a lot of sport, to be honest. But I think it's important to try and explain, when I work with the fighters, I try to explain to them there's so much more to them than what they do for a living. That goes for everyone, for all of us as well, but even more so for fighters as well, because you know just as well as I do, when someone's doing well, everyone's their mate, everyone wants to be there. You know, I've been in situations when somebody's had 20 people in the changing room before a fight and they've lost, and then me and two other people in the changing room after. You know, I've seen that, you know, firsthand, and you know, it's hard to watch that from my point of view, and it's not even me that's having it. So it's an unforgiving sport. So it's very important to guide them through that sort of process.
Absolutely. The other topic I wanted to talk about is your work with John Ryder.
Yeah.
John's career has been ups and downs, roller coaster already. Again, like you mentioned, every fighter's ambition is to become a world title holder, world champion, and that goes for John Ryder as well. Now, he obviously had a massive opportunity. He fought Canelo Alvarez, who is, you know, pound for pound, one of the best fighters of his generation. So that's some, you know, tall order to go into a fight, to have the right mindset and mentality to go, right, I'm going to go in there and achieve my dreams by beating the man. Just tell me your work with John ahead of that fight.
Yeah, John come to me. I've known him for a long time. He come to me, and John has another example of someone with a solid mindset. I think, and I spoke to John about this last week, yesterday, funny enough, and I was saying to him that a lot of people miss what his main triumph is in boxing, in terms of, like, everyone thinks, oh, John fought Canelo, that's amazing. And it is amazing. A lot of people forget that what John had to go through to get there, you know, and the decisions that went against him. And my personal view was that he beat Callum Smith. That, you know, maybe I'm a little bit one-sided, but you know, a lot of people thought that as well, and he should have been a world champion. Before that, there was I thought he beat Rocky Fielding, you know, and there's a lot of people that would have given up with a few decisions against them, and then to go and beat like Danny Jacobs and then even Zach Parker, you know, he was underdog there as well, and the pressure that he's put himself under and overcome, I think people missed that a little bit. So he's got a strong mindset to get to the point of where he did with Canelo. But he come to me and said to me, listen, and this is where he's smart, John Ryder, because he said that I've obviously headlined shows before, but nothing of this magnitude. And he wanted to make sure that he could prevent anything coming on him that potentially that he's never experienced before, because new experiences bring on new emotions. And I think this is maybe something that Charlo had against Canelo. He's probably thought, like, I've headline shows, I'm cool, I'm tough, and you know, all that. And then he's got there and frozen. He didn't hardly throw a punch. And it just shows how well John done, because a lot of people would say that Charlo was better than John. John put on a much better performance than him. And I think that comes down to his mental toughness. And with John, we worked a lot on a lot of visual work, you know, trying to create and go through the fight mentally with him, in breathing states that would get into nice and relaxed, eyes closed, just going through the fight in his head. And there's a lot about explaining to John about how the brain works as well from a neuro point of view, which is not really something I'd go too deeply in with a lot of clients, but John was quite interested in that. And I think that helps him as well to understand that his brain was trying to trick him in certain situations to protect him. And it worked. He didn't get the result, but I think the performance spoke for itself with everything he put in terms of getting ready for that fight.
No, absolutely. And Greg, I won't keep too much longer. The last question. It's a bit of sort of open advice to anybody. Is there a bit of advice that you'd give to any fighter that is a bit of a general bit of advice that you could give to anybody in that line, or any athlete, not just boxer?
I would say, you know, there's the world's changing quite a lot, and I think especially maybe in boxing a little bit more in terms of the old school mannerisms and how it works in terms of you just got to get in there and fight. I think, and the same for football, these sort of sports where, speaking to someone like me, everyone thinks it's a weakness when it's a complete strength. If you look at John Ryder's example, he didn't come to me because he felt weak. He come to me because he was ready for the biggest fight of his career. And, he wanted to make sure that he left no stone unturned. And I think everyone's career is so important. And I think the mind and the brain is the biggest, most important muscle we can have, most important. And I think no one really trains it. No one really works on it. And I think, people like me, we're not just there to help people who are down on their luck. It's a case of helping people to understand and recognize emotions and keep them, focused, ready to compete. And I think my best advice would be that to go down the road of maybe finding someone like me. There's plenty of people around, just to do a discovery call with them and see what it's about, because a lot of people come to me with no particular issues. They just say, I just want to be the best I can, and they include me in their camps and to be there. And sometimes you end up becoming just someone they want to talk to, and just about anything. And sometimes they don't get that, but I think for anyone really to try and find somebody that they can trust and who can help them to get that extra 1% in their career. That's the sort of advice I'd give to people.
And just for anyone who does want to come to you, Greg, personally and speak to yourself about it, check out your social media handles.
Yeah, it's Rise Mindset Mentor. And you can catch me on there and DM me for any questions or even a free discovery call, and go over some potential ways to help people build a stronger mindset.
Greg, fantastic. I want to thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. It's nice for me to do a bit of a different kind of interview and get the insights from yourself. It's been great.
Thanks very much, James. I appreciate it.
No worries at all.
Thanks, mate.